Welcome to Finish the Novel, a weekly vlog where I talk about past and present issues with writing my novel, as well as giving updates on the book status. This week is Super Bowl Sunday, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. I also went to a Slovak festival yesterday, so I was kind of busy all day, so I didn't get to record or do any edits to the video or anything. So this time, we're just going to keep it really brief and hopefully make it so there isn't that much editing to do, because that is usually what takes up the majority of my time. So this week I just wanted to touch briefly on this idea with writing of originality versus recognition. So let's just give a couple of definitions to these and kind of explain them a little bit. Originality would be completely writing new things or things that have never been written before, trying to be as original as possible. Whereas recognition would be using things, using tropes, using recognizable terms, basically building off of things that people recognize more immediately. And this is more of a fantasy thing. In my mind anyway. I'm sure that it does relate to other types of writing, other types of fiction and things, but for me, I usually think of it mostly with fantasy. So some examples of this would be using elves in your story, or using goblins, or using tropes like the wise old wizard, or the country boy who goes and saves the world, and things like that. I do use some of the tropes in my story, but I'm mostly leaning as far away as possible from using recognizable terms and recognizable things, like goblins and orcs and dragons and things. I do use similar things to dragons in my story. Like I use drakes, that's like a recognizable thing for sure. But as far as everything else, I try and be as original as possible. And so that, just to give you examples of that, like I have 3 species in my story, and they're the Maul, the Mun, and the Min. And they're like the humanoid species. So the Mun are basically men, and then the Maul are the more beast-like. I talked about them in the intro, I think. They're like more beast-like humanoids with like fur and horns. And then there's the Min, and they're very similar to Mun, but they are different. So trying to be as original as possible. So there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen when you're trying to be original like that and you're writing. The big one is you have to reaffirm to the reader a lot what these things are. Like, because I have those 3 species, well, with the Mun, I also have 6 clans. And so mixing in the clans and saying, this person's from Hrav, and then this person, he's talking to a Maul, and you have to constantly be reaffirming and setting up the context for conversations and dialogue and scenes, who this is, where you saw them before, just because these aren't recognizable terms. These terms, they're just going to, I had some people read my first couple of sections of my novel, and that was one of the big things that they told me was it was just hard to follow. So had to go back and do a lot of edits and just, reaffirm to the reader. And it's an easy thing to do as an author, because you're not thinking you have it perfectly situated in your head. You were thinking, I have this and this and this and this, and I call them these things, and the reader should be following along. But it's just not as clear to the reader. So that's something that I've been working on a lot, and I hope I'm getting better at it, because that will hopefully cut down on a lot of editing later on. And then just another pitfall are the tropes, right? Because these tropes, people like these tropes. That's why they're used very often. They're just kind of part of like a basic story, and what they do is they signal to a reader what they can expect from a story or where it's going to be going, and that has good things and bad things. So there are a lot of authors that try and subvert expectations by going away from tropes or using a trope but having a spin on it or a plot twist at the end. Biggest examples of these are like Game of Thrones, right? But Game of Thrones is also an example of how it can go extremely awry and be really detrimental to a story, because if you subvert them too much, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense in, as far as the narrative goes, then your readers just get really mad. Like, your fans will just get really mad at you, like they did with the showrunners of Game of Thrones. So it's a tightrope to walk, and I hope I'm doing an okay job at it in my story. I'm not done with the story, obviously. I'm trying to finish it, so we'll see at the end when I tie it all together if it works out. And I just did want to touch on like the positives of originality, because there are a lot. I talked about, the recognizable terms, but just from a practical standpoint, it's easier for readers to follow along, and it's easier to write, honestly, because like I said, you're not constantly reaffirming those terms or, redefining those terms to people while you're writing, and there's less words, and it's easier to flow while you're writing. You don't have to like cut into a paragraph and be like, find a reason to bring back why a character remembers this character or whatever. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Let me know in the comments if you're a writer and you have similar issues. For me, that's kind of been a big one with the story. And now just for an update on my novel, this week, again, guys, I need to crank out some more pages. I only got like 5 or 6 again. So that's the same story as the 2 weeks prior. Just need to crank out more. I'm thinking a good strategy will be writing for longer periods of time instead of just carving out 1 or 2 hours a week. I think that when you write for a longer period of time, you can enter that flow state a little easier, and that's when you really it just comes out of you, right? You're just cranking out pages. So if I could, maybe take one day where I exercise more, and then we're going back to the routine video. It's constantly evolving. The routine's always changing. I'm probably going to try and do like longer workouts one day of the week, and then just not work out for a couple days and just try and write for like 4-hour segments. And I hope that will put a lot more pages down. We'll see. And then just for a quick update on what I've been watching this week, I watched the new Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon. It just released. It's a reboot of the movie with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. And this one was like created by Childish Gambino. I can never remember his real name. Charles Glover, right? So it was good. I liked it. It ended on a cliffhanger, which is kind of disappointing. I don't like it when seasons don't even know if they're going to do a second season and they leave you on a cliffhanger. The other showrunner, Sloan, she said that it stands alone on its own as a season, and I just kind of disagree. There's way too many loose ends, and the cliffhanger, no, they're expecting a second season for sure. But that's it, guys. Thank you for checking back this week. Check back next week. We'll have another quick video and an update, and have a great day. Bye.